most entrepreneurs are failures. In other words, it was in the failures, in the losses. And so whenever we see these books saying, well, you got to do this right, you do that right, you do that right, I'm like, no, it's not, that's not what I'm finding. What I'm finding is most entrepreneurs are at a history of losses. And it was because of how they were being in those moments of loss that made them great entrepreneurs, that transformed how they grew.
Welcome to Small Business Pivots. I'm your host, Michael Morrison, a small business coach and founder of Boss. Boss helps business owners create a business that can run without them. Go to businessownershipsimplified.com to learn more. And make sure to hang around to the end of this episode for my recap and Coach's Corner, where I share applicable action steps that every small business owner can do to create a business that runs without them. Our guest today is Don Schmincke. Don is the author of the best-selling book, The Code of Executive, and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal and USA Today. He is an award-winning speaker, researcher, founder of the SAGA Leadership Institute, and delivered over 1,700 speeches. And now, after working with over 7,000 CEOs, they have validated the protocols for success. Let's get to Don now and learn fresh leadership capabilities for faster strategic growth and execution. All right, welcome to another Small Business Pivots episode. Today we have a very special guest. How are you today?
Good, thank you. You?
Thank you. What part of this beautiful world are you coming to us from?
Well, I'm back in town now, so just north of D.C. and Baltimore. Small town called Reisterstown.
If I were to visit there, I always like to ask, what is one thing I would need to do or one of our listeners need to do that hasn't been there?
Oh, geez. Well, we're probably within an hour and a half of most of the battlefields of the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Between the British and the Civil War. So,
wow.
If you're into those kind of histories, there's a lot around here. Yeah. Plus Washington, D.C. is right down the street.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about yourself real quick before we get going, because you've got a ton of good nuggets that you can share with our listeners today.
Oh, God, I don't know where to start. And I was like a high school dropout, and then I ended up going to a community college, and they saw me, something in me, I guess. And the next thing I know, I'm getting catapulted into MIT. And that's where I started getting involved with a lot of unusual scientific and engineering work, mainly around like AI in the early stages, which looks nothing like it does now.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Earth and planetary physics was really my major, and I worked on nuclear guidance systems, and then also automated the Harvard MIT biomedical lab. And that's when I got interested in humans, and that study took me to Hopkins, where I ended up doing some work there and understanding how humans group. And I didn't know anything about business, but I ended up getting attached to the Johns Hopkins, the executive MBA program there. That's when I observed a lot of frustration in young executives that were starting businesses or working in certain areas of their companies, and they were frustrated with how to implement these management theories. I mean, there were a lot of books out, but so they asked me if I could do a biological research study. And so I sure, why not? And that's when everything exploded. Next thing I know, I'm on CNN, I'm in the Wall Street Journal, and things just took off. So what I do now is basically train about 700 entrepreneurs and CEOs a year, and a lot of the research that we discovered. So I've learned a lot just by hanging around business owners and entrepreneurs and applying science and ancient discoveries into current work. So that's now what we do, and we grow companies that way. So I'm enjoying it. I'm having it fun. I'm still learning a lot, still making mistakes, still figuring it out. But
learn to earn. It never stops, right? I want to jump back just a little bit. You mentioned high school, and I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, one of our bigger challenges is ourselves. So like mindset. And I know for myself, I was not studious, and I had a hard time struggling growing up. I was an introvert. And so I really had to work hard at that. But a lot of people kind of get stuck in their own way. Did you find a source that you kind of catapulted out of that, or were there other circumstances that caused you to do you said high school dropout? Is that
Well,
right?
yeah. I mean, I forgot to show up for my senior year until the
Oh,
police told me I had to repeat the senior year, and I was like, I ain't going to go through this again.
yeah.
So what do I got to do? So you got 90 days to do the entire year, which and the teachers were great. Everybody came to my rescue, and I ended up doing a lot of reading and testing and got out. And so, I didn't have to repeat the senior year, but then I was in rock bands, I was trying to be cool, and and I ended up I noticed that the guys coming in when I was pumping gas with the fancy cars had good education. So I thought, well, I better get an education. So that's what started me. It's like, it was really just a series of things. And that's when community college, and then ended up just getting fascinated. They didn't care whether you showed up or not because they already got the tuition. So I thought,
Yeah,
this is
right. Yeah.
no police are going to track me down on this one. I just
Yeah.
lose a lot of money. I started getting involved with engineering and science, and yeah, and a couple people were like retired or had come out of the Cambridge area and recommended I apply to MIT, which I didn't know what that was. I thought it was like a trade school or something. I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did, went through a battery of testing, and I don't know, whatever they saw in me, but that's how I got in. And then things took off from there in terms of the research and everything else. So now I ended up doing a lot of, for my research, I ended up doing a lot of expeditions. So I've been around in various extreme environments around the world to study humans and how they work. And a lot of my books and articles go into what we discovered and how we apply it to help entrepreneurs. And in fact, this my latest book just came out a couple of weeks ago called Winners and Losers, just for entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to do the book. I was kind of like approached by several people, and they said, "No, Don, you should, you trained 30,000 CEOs. I mean, you probably learned a few things
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
these guys."
I would hope.
And I said, "Well, there's a million copies of entrepreneurs for books for entrepreneurs out there. Why do they need another book?" And they said, "Well, there's not a million successful entrepreneurs. That's the problem."
Yeah.
They said, so maybe you can do your research, find out why it's failing so much and how to fix it. And so that's what happened. It was really kind of cool. And I got a lot of support. I mean, geez, tons of CEOs participated. And yeah, so Winners and Losers released. And then I was surprised it became number one on the entrepreneur management category on Amazon for probably a few seconds. And then that was it. So it's been fun. It's been an area that I wasn't expecting to get into, but now I'm getting a lot of interest. So I think maybe I'll hang around there for a little while.
Well, I know you've already shared a couple of nuggets that most entrepreneurs, we all need to hear, and that is never give up. The trajectory of your life was a rock band, and then you cut your hair and look at you now. And then, the other thing is your story. So I have a lot of entrepreneurs that will come to us and say, why would I write a book? There's plenty of books out there. And I'm like, yeah, but your story's not out there. And so you're kind of reaffirming that. So tell us a little bit about your company, and then let's hear some good stuff that you have to share to help entrepreneurs kind of get over the hump, because most of us are stuck in our business. And so we're trying to look for ways to catapult over and to the other side like you did. So I'll let you have the floor.
Let's see. My company, it's kind of a diverse situation. I mean, obviously, I do a lot of speaking and publishing and a lot of research, but we also implement everything we teach. So I do spend a lot of time with clients in the field and growing their companies. What we're looking at doing is maybe doing more workshop or personal development work. The Pacific Institute actually and I are looking at joining forces a bit because their founder had died some years ago, Lou Tice, and he's the guy who was really an entrepreneur. I mean, 50 years ago, he started this thing. His research paralleled mine pretty nicely. So, but he had an earlier start than I did. But he's the guy that invented the term mindset and find your why. And that like half a century ago. They've trained, I don't know, 7 million people over their time. So I'm looking at integrating. In fact, we have a strategy session tomorrow, bringing together our strategic positioning of growth of companies with the remarkable personal development and professional development work is. So I'm looking at that as like a next venture because we're always evolving. So I wish I had could tell you my company was this stable, uh, the service business, but it's not. It's very unstable, and we're always changing and adding things to it.
Well, that's good for entrepreneurs to hear because I know a lot of us, we want to check the boxes and we think, hey, everything's going well. And then it's not because you're not evolving, kind of like what you are.
Mm.
And I want to pause for a second and ask you, because you've asked or worked with so many entrepreneurs, would you say mindset, personal development, or business development is what a lot of business owners need? What is one more than the other, or are they equal?
I think, yeah, it all depends. For some, it was almost an unconscious, accidental event that
Mm.
had them go to a whole new level. And I'm really grateful that I have some in my work. I've been able to run into some great, just brilliant people, very successful people, and for some reason they want to hang out with me, so we become friends, and I learn a lot from them. Like Cy Wakeman wrote some incredible New York Times bestselling books, and I've got to know her very well, and we've exchanged a lot of ideas. We're kind of on the same advisory boards, and so what happens is that advisory board. There's a thing called a National Speakers Association,
Mm.
and there's a subgroup with some of the top speakers and authors, and we hang out together on these conferences. And she's in that group. That's how we get to know each other. But when I talked to her about how she did it, it was just unconscious. I mean, she had brilliant work she had discovered in her hospital career. Had a following of people that were tracking what her insights were, and then next thing you know, she's a best-selling author on the New York Times. But she'll say, or she says, "Hey, no, I didn't do anything that they said I should have done," and all of a sudden, here we are. So she's a beautiful person, and so it's just an example of people that just unconsciously become extremely competent. I think just by following their gut, or what they find are intuitively obvious to them. On the other hand, there are others that maybe they were in a personal journey, a personal crisis, or something that wasn't working out, and so out of some either urgency or some passion, focused on doing something remarkable. And then, of course, with a number of fits and starts and failures and discoveries. In fact, that was one of the things we noticed in the book, is that most entrepreneurs are failures. In other words, it was in the failures, in the losses, that transformed how they grew.
Mm.
And so whenever we see these books saying, well, you got to do this right, you do that right, you do that right, I'm like, no, it's not. That's
Yeah.
not what I'm finding. What I'm finding is most entrepreneurs are at a history of losses. And it was because of how they were being in those moments of loss that made them great entrepreneurs.
I often say my greatest lessons learned are failures.
Yeah.
I've been an entrepreneur for a couple, 3 decades now, and I'd say my best learning moments were my failures that I overcame. But the biggest point for me was how I came out of it, the mindset there. So you work with entrepreneurs. Is it more leadership, or is it more scaling the business, growing the business? Kind of what do you bring to the table for entrepreneurs to help them succeed?
It all depends, because you sort of need, like what I'm teaching now in my workshops is sort of a 7-step system for strategic success. So, first I think it starts with strategy, because that's what needs to be honed and adapted. Because generally I find that a lot of entrepreneurs are working on tactics, not strategy. What we do first is we usually look at the strategy itself. I mean, is it sound? Is it powerful? Is it going to work? And then we get into the areas of leadership and structure and culture and all those elements that have to go into execution. So it really is a tapestry of things. It's more of an art than a checklist. I mean, I really don't like those models where it's, well, just fill in the blanks,
Yeah.
and then you got it. It's like, no, you don't have it.
No, no, you
that's
just
not
filled
gonna
in the
work.
blanks. That's all you
You just
did.
Yeah, so it really is a spectrum of things that have to occur. But which is needed really depends on the individual. Some entrepreneurs are great, but they're growing too fast and they're having growth pains. So we have to look at issues of capitalization, structure, culture, the people issues. Others, they're not growing. They may have a business that's, the machine's running, but it's not taken off yet. They're not getting down the runway. So that's a different way of assessing and helping them.
You're listening to Small Business Pivots, a podcast created for small business owners. Small Business Pivots is supported by Boss. Boss helps business owners create a business that runs without them through business coaching, lending, courses, events, additional resources, and much, much more. Go to businessownershipsimplified.com to learn more. If you're enjoying the podcast and want to stay up to date with all our latest episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you're loving what you hear, show us a little bit of love by giving us a thumbs up or leaving a positive review, whatever platform you're on. Your support means the world to us, and it helps others discover the show too. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to hit subscribe and like. Now let's get back to our guest.
It's interesting that you're our guest today because it's Q4 of 2023, and a lot of entrepreneurs are strategizing for 2024. They're hoping for a better 2024, and I find that about half of them are making a plan, and the others are just hoping it's better. So a lot of times I find that they don't know how to strategize. What is some guidance you could give to those people that they're just trying to make ends meet week to week, but they still want a plan just to kind of get them going in the right direction? Where does one start?
I think you start with defining what does winning mean. And that was one of the things that came out of, like one of my coaches is Mark Levy, and he's the guy that helped Simon Sinek take off. And so he's and so he was helping me looking at, what is it I do? So interviewing my clients and things like that. I came up with some fascinating insights. But he said basically it's you're focusing on winning and losing, and that's what you're teaching. And that's where the book came from. But the thing around defining what winning means is something that I think is often lost. It's either we inherit it, or I don't know, we sort of wake up in the middle of this thing that we think, oh, I got to do this, but we never step back and say, what does winning really mean to me? And then the next question is, okay, how do we do it? So in the how, I think the elements that we're using, and we've been using now for a couple of decades to grow companies faster, is really simple, ancient work. And it really is around, it's not about analysis. And I was part of the problem because I was teaching analysis at Johns Hopkins, and here's how you do a SWOT analysis, a market analysis, a pricing analysis.
Yeah.
It was all bullshit. I mean, it was just bullshit because there were companies starting off, small entrepreneur companies, that all the experts said they're not going to make it. They're doing everything wrong, and they would just put them down. And then these small companies, for some reason, rise up and dominate their entire industry. So that's an interesting event, and I was curious as to what the hell's going on with that.
Yeah.
Southwest Airlines was supposed to never leave Texas. Amazon was never going to make it. So all these industry experts, now they all shut up because these companies are like, dominating the world. So I found out that it wasn't about analysis. The strategy is really about intuition. And this has been a timeless insight, but we sort of lost it in our academic studies and what we teach. But it's intuiting, it's shifting your beliefs around the world, around what the world means. And that is, and so they saw the world differently in each case, and so the areas where we need to challenge ourselves to see things differently is what our ancestors have been telling us. In order to win, you have to understand, like, where's the battlefield tomorrow? And a lot of times we don't market segment properly, or we just use the industry segments. We don't really invent our own. And then, so we don't know what the targets are. The other part is, who's the real enemy? And we think it's maybe the rivals. But sometimes customers can be an enemy. Sometimes suppliers can be an enemy. Sometimes, it could be technology shifts or information weaponry. I mean, there's all kind of areas. And the autopsies we've done in dead companies, a lot of the arrows that killed them came in from the back, not the front.
Hmm.
So, where's the battlefield? Who's the real enemy? Those are important areas to have an intuitive shift in your beliefs, because once you can get clear on that, then how to win or how to outmaneuver or how to out-intuit the enemy becomes easier. And that's where you come up with a winning formula. So I generally start there, because unless that's clear, you're just throwing stuff at the wall hoping it sticks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned Amazon. Amazon is obviously dominating, but a lot of people don't understand how long it takes to dominate. And so I know with all the social media buzz of 10x your business in 30 days and all the promises and all that stuff, and then you see Amazon can deliver it to your door today. Everybody wants things real fast. What would you say average? I know it's different for every business, but what would you say is kind of an average? If I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to sit down and do this strategy, what is the average that it takes to really complete that strategy and then possibly execute it to where you start seeing results? Because I know so many entrepreneurs, they just want to get things done today.
Generally, when we do our strategic planning retreats, it's about a 2-day program.
Okay.
There's a lot of front end work that goes on, interviews, looking at what's been done already, previous plans, previous actions. And from that, we're able to then design a 2-day experience. The execution piece takes a little bit longer, because you have to learn how to adapt. It's not a straight line like we teach in business school. It's a zigzag line. And how do you quickly pivot and adapt is about speed. So essentially, we work on speed of execution, because the faster you are, the faster you can adapt in executing that strategy. And so that's kind of, and then that never stops. So 10 years later, you'll still be adapting and
Yeah.
responding. And so that's your way of life when you're running a business. But that's it. It doesn't really take months. I mean, I hear some people say, well, we've been 6 months with this consultant working our strategy. I'm like, you just wasted 6 months. I mean, you're probably doing tactics, not strategy. The strategy
Right.
should take that long.
Yeah. Yeah. So after someone has a strategy, what would you say is kind of the next step? Would you say that's getting the right people, or is there something else that needs to happen next?
It depends. I mean, some companies are very people intensive. Some people aren't people intensive. And kind of, so it's a matter of looking at what that means. I mean, if I if I strike an oil field out here in the backyard, it's not going to be people intensive.
Yeah.
Just put a hole in the ground and let's pump some oil. You need some
Yeah.
people to get started, but then after that, it's just throw flowing oil. On the other hand, a lot of service businesses, for example, could be much more people intensive. So I think it really gets down to looking at what the next step is what do I need to execute with speed? So some companies have enough people. Sometimes they have more than enough people. And so it's a matter of structuring. Other companies have a great structure, but it's a matter of, getting cultural alignment, getting buy-in, getting people to own the execution. Sometimes it's like having leaders that can think at higher levels, because not everybody can. Dr. Elliot Jacks did a lot of great psychological research into this, but some people can't think out 3 to 5 years in complex ways. They're great at doing day-to-day work. So sometimes I find a lot of entrepreneurs are frustrated because they don't have the executive team they need. So that's a different area. Some may need capitalization. So that's a whole different strategy for moving forward. So it really depends, because there's really no one way to take your first step. Generally, what we do in strategic planning is try to walk out with 3 to 5 critical success factors. And we try to take the winning formula and create what we call a compelling saga, which is we stole it from the Vikings, but some sort of story that represents what winning means, how you're going to do it, the elements of that. So once we have that, then I think entrepreneurs should come up with 3 to 5 critical success factors. Like, in order to achieve this saga, in order to win, these are the 5 things we need to do that's critical for our success. Those then become your next steps.
So for the businesses that know what to do and can't seem to get that traction going, do you have any advice for that?
I would find out why they don't have traction.
Okay.
Like, what's stopping you? Because a lot of times you learn a lot from doing. And this is where analysis then can become helpful, as to what are the elements that are stopping execution. You expected this project or this activity or something to take this long. It's not. Why not? What's going on? And that leads to the discovery, because there you're now taking a loss and creating something wonderful from it. You're able to learn and grow. And a lot of entrepreneurs do that. Not that everything is going to work. Like Richard Branson, right? He's like one of the top entrepreneurs in the world. Well, when I was researching biographies of these people, when I was writing the book, Winners and Losers, his first company in the magazine business didn't make any money, and then he pivoted to records. And then he tried a soda company, and I think it was called Virgin Cola, and then that fizzled.
Yeah.
And then he thought, let's try cars, and Virgin Cars and that never revved up, right?
Yeah.
And then Virgin Digital, perfect, obvious. Look, we're going to go from records to digital. The downloads didn't happen.
Yeah.
He started fashion companies that didn't get, and then Virgin Orbit, the sister company of Virgin Galactic, it failed a lot. I mean, they're halting operations, so I don't know if they re-engaged or not. So he's looking at all these failures, and you're thinking, God, this guy's a failed entrepreneur. Well, no, he's not a failed entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It was in the losses of those things that he learned, and he adjusted, and he adapted, and just became stronger. So that's, I think, is the journey for entrepreneurs. We teach people how to win. We don't teach them how to lose.
Yeah.
But I think we need to teach how to lose.
Yeah.
How to lose powerfully. So that's kind of one of the themes of the book, is how to lose powerfully. That's what you should be doing.
Kara Golden, who's the founder of Hint Water, has been on our show, and she's a connection of mine. And she calls herself the accidental entrepreneur. And I find that the most successful entrepreneurs, it usually happened by accident, just like Richard Branson. He kept trying until something just stuck. And Richard Branson even said, I believe, sometime around after the paper or whatever magazine failed, that he was like, if I would have set out to be a billionaire, I would have been bankrupt. Like, that wasn't his ultimate purpose. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, I think that sometimes we start something for the wrong reason. And so we often lose, and then we got to start over and pick the pieces up and keep moving on. You mentioned having a business coach, which I love, because most successful people have one. I know I have 3 for 3 different reasons. I'm not in that bad a shape where I need 3 business coaches, but one of them is simply an accountability coach, just to keep me on track. And another one's a business, and because there's territories I haven't been in, and so I want to keep catapulting myself with those that have been there. What are some losses, if you don't mind sharing, that you've overcome, just to kind of give a sense to people that we all go through them? And then how did you overcome those?
No, well, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, at one point I wanted to get into medical technology, and then that didn't work out, and then I started looking at maybe getting involved with, the evolution of computing, it's my engineering background. And then that didn't work out. And then I got into this area of research on humans. So what happened? And then even in my current company, I had numerous disasters. I mean, I've tried to focus more on the research and publishing and teaching. And so I would hire people to take over the delivery of services, which is where we make the money, so I can focus more on the research. And God, that failed probably half a dozen times. I can't tell you how many teams I had to fire that. It was my fault. I mean, I hired people that said they were great, but they couldn't perform, and then quickly after 6 months, it's like, I got to let you go. So, and the problem was I never really tested like I should have. Like I trusted that because they said they were great and they had a note from their mother that it'd be fine.
Yeah.
But, what I should have done is I should have tested it. It's just like, okay, here's a small project. See if you can make money on this, or see if you can implement this, see if you can make it happen. So my business model has been, tragic when I look at the history of it. But now I'm like linking up with companies that are already functioning, because that way you don't have to test, because they're already there.
Yeah.
They're already making it happen. So linking up, partnering, like with the Pacific Institute, as I'm doing now, is what I've learned. Now, should I have told myself that 20 years ago? Yeah, that would have saved me millions of dollars
Yeah.
if I had told myself that.
Yeah. Well, I know Darren Hardy often says that, because he has that success magazine, and he often says that we only see like 5% of people's success. So, we see Richard Branson out there on the ocean at Necker Island and doing all these fun things, but then we don't see all the depositions he goes through, and, all those failures and losses and figuring this out and that. So I appreciate you sharing that we all go through them, no matter what stage of business we're in. I always often say that every business has challenges. They're just different. So we never quite get it figured out. And I know for the startup entrepreneurs like myself that didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family, I don't see that. I just see successful people. So it's always good to hear that we're always needing to evolve. It's always going to be uncomfortable. And I feel like if it is too comfortable, it's not going to be here pretty quick, because you need to keep evolving. Like you said, adapting, you got to keep changing and helping people. So is there any specific pivot that you would say for a business owner that they need to keep in mind, like kind of like at the end of the road, like I see something coming, I need to pivot, need to do something differently? Anything that you found to be instrumental in that with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, in fact, it came up. It came up as I was doing research for the book. Is that sometimes, like a part of the book is I dispel myths that I found that were in the way, and one of the myths was this myth of perseverance.
Oh.
Because keep persevering, and that's kind of a loaded question, because do I keep going? That's a problem. Like maybe you should pivot. Like maybe you should give up, because that's it. Like Sears is still going, but they should have pivoted,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they should have given up and took a different a path. So there's areas where we need to persevere, of course. Like the samurai. Like my first book was on the samurai, so I learned a lot from their leadership. But like was it what's the quote? It's like 7 times down, 8 times up. Like keep getting up,
Yeah.
So that's a positive look at persevering. But the other side, and this is why it's such an art and not a science, is the art of it is where you're going, not really there. And should you pivot? Yeah. And so I wish there was that's the problem. It's not a black and white answer. It's you're living in a world of art and creation. And there's some people that just kept persevering. They finally achieved it. But then there's a lot of others that persevered and they died. The company went under. So what does it mean for you? And how do you know when to stop persevering on one thing and learn from that and then adjust and adapt?
Yeah, that's a good question, because all those books just say, never give up. Keep going. You have a plan, follow the plan.
Right.
So that was the purpose of my question. So any final words of wisdom from you to share with entrepreneurs who are trying to get over that hump?
No, I think I think don't get caught up in the myths. Perseverance was just one, but there are others, and I find that you always keep learning. In other words, just keep losing powerfully. And there's only certain people that can do that. There's another thing that came out of the research in the book was that some people shouldn't be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I mean, they're brilliant people that function much better in a work environment. Let somebody else worry about payroll.
Yeah.
But entrepreneurs, they seem to have this interesting risk capacity. Yeah, I'll mortgage the house. I'll mortgage up my car. I'll take this. People think you're nuts, right? But that's what you do as an entrepreneur. So that's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. So entrepreneur is not really the cool journey everybody thinks it is. It's really, it's a tough journey, and it's not for everyone. And thank God, because if everybody's an entrepreneur, the whole world go into chaos.
Right. We wouldn't have any employees, good ones. We'd all be fighting, scratching at each other. So what's the best way to follow, get in touch with you, get your books, all that good stuff?
For sure. Well, Winners and Losers is everywhere. I mean, Barnes & Noble and Amazon, wherever people distribute books. But the website, which is what I'm trying to, and I'm saying I'm so busy, but I love doing the blog thing. But I have to say, I go through these runs. I'll do like 5 or 6, and then you won't hear from me for a few months because I'm on another project. But SAGAleadership.com, we stole it from the Vikings. The SAGA leadership.com is, that's probably a good place to start. I'll try to put everything in there. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Is there a social media platform that you're active on that people can follow?
Yours?
Okay. I love it. I love it. Well, we're going to put all the information that you've shared in the show notes, your book and everything. Out of all the books you've written, what is your favorite?
Well, obviously the latest one's always the favorite, right? Right. I mean, I've been writing for a few books here and there. High Altitude Leadership is kind of more of an epic thing I did with Chris Warner, the climber. And that was fun to read because it was live stories of human survival and death and how we can apply that. But I'm just getting a lot of interest in this because of people like you that are inspiring me to look at this entrepreneur segment. I'm finding that to be exciting. So I'm looking forward to doing a lot more work in that area. So my latest book, I guess I would say, was my favorite, but it transitions, right? I mean, ask me in a few months, and I'll have another answer.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've written my last book, and I'm so done with that book. But it's a good book. I'm ready to write another one. But you have good ones coming out, so I don't need to. So, well, I appreciate your time today. You've been a joy. You've helped a lot of people today, inspired, and I wish you continued success. And thanks again for being on our show.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Recap and Coaches Corner, the podcast section for business owners for applicable insights to create a business that runs seamlessly, even without you. In today's recap section, I want to leave you with a powerful reminder as we dialed into the essentials that every business needs to be successful. Creating a business that runs seamlessly without your constant presence requires 3 things. They are strategy, intentionality, and action. Creating a business that can run without you is not about just doing things to do things. In other words, trying to stay busy thinking more hours will make a difference. It's about cultivating a resilient and self-sufficient organization with intentionality. And the only way to do that is with a plan, a strategy, if you will, and by taking action. Stepping over into the Coach's Corner, I want to share with you one actionable item that you can intentionally take action on to move your business towards being a more self-sufficient, seamless operation. Here's your actionable nugget. Delegate strategically. Identify tasks that don't require your unique skill and empower your team to handle them. By doing this, you not only free up your time, but also foster a culture of trust and collaboration within your organization. If you need help identifying the task that you should delegate first, which is most business owners' challenge, email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com and ask for our delegation quadrant, which I'll send to you for free. Remember, sustainable growth is rooted in the ability to empower others and build a business that thrives independently. Thank you for listening to Small Business Pivots. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast. If you need help growing your business, go to businessownershipsimplified.com and schedule a free conversation by clicking the orange button in the top right corner. If you have a guest or topic suggestion for our podcast or just want to talk anything small business related, email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com. We'll see you next time on Small Business Pivots.